Welcome back. I'm Brian Tier, pastor of Tyler Road Baptist Church in Henderson, Texas. We're going to be in the book of Song of Solomon today. We are going through our quarterly. We've covered Proverbs, we've covered Ecclesiastes. Now we're going to the Song of Solomon, which some have entitled it what the first words here are, the Song of Songs, meaning out of all the songs, this is the greatest song. This is a collection of love poems. This is kind of a story about uh, Solomon and a Shulamite woman. In most is what most people say. Sometimes people think that there's three main characters: the Shulamite, Solomon, and a shepherd. And I've heard all of these different things. It seems to me like, and I'll show you as we go through here, that it's Solomon and the Shulamite woman, and that he is referred to as a shepherd, which that was their common in their culture. That's what you were, and there's a lot of various language in here, figurative language, and so that would not be out of the question, I don't believe. And there's a lot of speculation about this book, about what it means and who it's talking about, who it references, the figurativeness. Is it supposed to be romantic poetry? Is it figurative of Christ and his churches? Is it figurative of the Lord and Israel? And that's the way that a lot of Israelites took it. With the romantic nature of the language, it would seem to me, and this is just me, that this is speaking of a romance between two people, between Solomon and the Shulamite woman. That's the way that we're going to look at it today. And if it's different, you can definitely let me know. pastortier@gmail.com. You can email me. Be glad to get your viewpoint on it for sure. But that's, as I've studied it and looked at it through the past couple of weeks, I think that this is the direction. This is the direction I'm going to go in. but more than that, hopefully, as we look at this passage, it'll give you an overview of the book of Song of Solomon. Maybe you've never looked at it before. Maybe you've never read it. You know, a lot of times my girls, they love to watch these romance movies and stuff like that, Jane Austen movies and all that kind of stuff. And I just, I kind of tune out on it. So let them go on it. But anyway, what it does show us is that God sanctifies marriage, and it is appropriate for us to have romance in our marriages. That's completely okay, as we see here. And God, as a matter of fact, the first command in the book of Genesis is to be fruitful and multiply. That's what he told us to do, and that's the way that it's done. And I'm going to try not to be explicit in this video here. If you want to, go watch something else or somebody that's going to do that, I will definitely get too embarrassed to do that. So we will abstain from that as best as we can. I'm not going to read every bit of Song of Solomon to you. You can read that. You can take your husband and wife, and y'all can study it out. And I think that would be all well and good. Okay. One of the things I do want to point out here is what the Bible tells us about marriage. This is in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 4. Marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. And we'll start with that to let you know that what God's feelings is that God's feelings is one man for one woman for one lifetime, and that the sexual relationship should be in the covenant marriage. Okay, and that's the only time that it is. And so however that you interpret this, whatever you get out of Song of Solomon and the way you think that it's interpreted and everything, let's remember the biblical principles, and that is that God has saved the sexual nature of man and woman to marriage. Okay, trying to be very careful here. All right, so one of the things I did here for you, and hopefully you'll see this as we go through here, is that I've highlighted we've got really different speakers here. We've got the narration, which I'm going to leave in white, as well as the other part that's white is sometimes you get responses from the women in the city, or all of the people or whatever. Those are in white. Okay, the Shulamite woman is in pink. All right, now I put that in here, and then the blue is the male speaker. All right, if you think that's Solomon, then this is Solomon speaking in this part here, which is again the part that I take on it. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, so remember, Solomon wrote many different things. As a matter of fact, 1 Kings chapter 4 verse 32 tells us that he wrote something like 3,000 proverbs and 1,005 songs. All right, and this is the Song of Songs, so this tops all of them. All right, and again, the three different views: Israel and God, Christ and his churches. They go to Ephesians chapter 5 for that, or that it's a romantic love poem. Okay. Chapters 1 through 3, if you wanted to break it down, chapter 1 through 3 is the before marriage. These are two people falling in love with one another and desiring one another. Chapter 4 is the marriage, and I believe that's what it is, chapter 4. I didn't write all my notes down here, but anyway, we'll get into that. And then the following is after the marriage, and how that they needed to sustain their love, and how to sustain their love. And there's a lot of really good lessons in here for those of us that are married. And so, I suggest that you read this and study it out. Hopefully this will help you out a little bit, at least with the narration part of it. Okay, so you could at least mark that down, and then get into it. All right, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's, and she starts off by, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine, because of the savor of thy good ointments. Thy name is ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee. Draw me, we will run after thee. The king hath brought me into his chambers." Okay, so she's saying that she has a strong desire for this man, and that everything about him is appealing to her. He's got a good name, and everybody really loves him. However, she is drawn to him. Okay, and the people say, "We will be glad and rejoice in thee. We will remember thy love more than wine. The upright love thee." Okay, so this talks about the righteous, and how that this is, he's got a good name. She says he's got a good name. She also has a good name. I remember reading in the book of Ruth, and that's one of the things that you notice about Ruth and Boaz as well, is that Ruth had a good name, and Boaz points that out in chapter 3, and also Naomi points out the fact that Boaz had a good name as well. Okay, but she's got a problem. This is the problem of the Shulamite woman. She says, "I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me." In other words, she's been working out in the fields, and in those days, being fair is, and this is true in that part of the world, being fair and pale is what you want it to be. And I've just noticed this, people that are fair want to be dark, and those that are dark want to be fair. This is just part of human nature. We should just take what God has given to us, and that's perfectly fine. But as she's looking at herself, she says, "Don't look at me. I've been working outside too much, and I've been out in the sun too much." It says, "My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept." All right, and so she says, "Look, I've been working so hard. I've been keeping up with what my mother's children, my brothers, have told me to do, and I've not been able to keep my vineyard up." And she may be talking about her own physical appearance here, or she may be actually talking about a vineyard here. I'm not sure on that, and I'll show you why here. If you turn to the last chapter 8 of Song of Solomon, this talks about her brothers in verse 8. Okay, they talk about how that she's young. All right, and the first part of verse 8 talks about how that she's young, and her brothers are saying, what shall we do for our sister in the day she will be spoken for? In the day that somebody tries to marry her, what are we going to do? If she be a wall, if she still is young, we will build upon her a palace of silver. And if she be a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. In other words, we're going to keep her here with us. Okay, so we're not going to let anybody, they're going to protect her. All right, but she says, I'm older. That's the first part of verse 10. Then was I in the eyes of one that had found favor. Solomon had a vineyard at Bel-Hamon. He let it out, or rented it out the vineyard unto keepers. Every one for the fruit thereof was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver. My vineyard, which is mine, is before me. Okay, so she says, look, I've got my own vineyard to tend to. And what we see here, that in the first verses, that her brothers have gotten her working so hard in their vineyards that she has not been able to take care of hers. And so it seems to me that she has a vineyard and she's just not been able to keep up her own stuff. And again, this may be talking about appearances. I'm not exactly sure. You know, you could have your own thoughts on that. That's fine. But what we see here, and she's going to be talking about that there's going to be a problem whenever Solomon wants to marry her, and that he needs to take care of the problem. And that problem could be talking about her brothers, that he needs to go and get this situation taken care of with her brothers, that they don't want her to marry yet. They don't feel like that she's old enough to. But as we see in the last chapter there, she says, hey, I am old enough to care for myself. I can do, and I need to do this myself. All right. And so that's kind of the lay of the land as I see it. All right. And so she asked, tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turneth aside as the flocks of thy companions? All right. So she says, where are you? I'm going to go find you. Let's go out and have a picnic, have a date. All right. And he says, verse 8, if thou know not, O thou fairest among women, go thy way forth by the footsteps of the flock, and feed thy kids beside the shepherd's tents. I have compared thee, O my love, to a company of Pharaoh's, of horses and Pharaoh's chariots. Thy cheeks are comely with rows of jewels. And you'll see this throughout the whole thing, as that he paints this picture of how beautiful that she is. And certainly that is the desire that we should have towards our spouses, isn't it? That they are the very best. And that's the way that he paints the picture of her, is that, look, she is, and that's what they do here. They paint these pictures of how beautiful each other are, and this is what their draw is to one another. Okay. Now, this is a pretty good one. So verse 12 says, while the king sits at his table, my spikenard sends forth the smell thereof. In other words, she's perfumed herself up. She's trying to get his attention even while they're eating. A bundle of myrrh is in my well-beloved unto me. He shall lie all night betwixt my breasts. My beloved is unto me as the clusters of camphor and the vineyards of Engedi. All right, so she's trying to attract him. She's putting this perfume on. She wants him to see her while they're at dinner time. He's probably got a banquet going on, and she's trying to catch his attention, and her intentions is for them to be married. Verse 15, and she catches his attention. All right, behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes. So he looks over there. He's obviously smells her. So he sees her, and he's like, wow, this is a beautiful woman. All right, and then they go out on this date, and they probably go out on a picnic. This is what it sounds like to me. In verse 16, behold, thou art fair, my beloved, yea, pleasant. Also, our bed is green. You can imagine the grass, laying out in the grass. The beams of our house is cedar, so they're in the cedar trees. The rafters of fir. In other words, they're out maybe at the lake somewhere. Okay, and she says, I am the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valleys. So as they're getting acquainted with one another. I was thinking about whenever Kate and I were dating, we used to like to go down to the lake on Sundays, and there was a big picnic area and all that kind of stuff, and we would go down there, and I'd cook out on the grill for her and that sort of thing, and we really got to knowing one another during those times, and that was a beautiful time. And I think that this is probably speaking of the same thing. Okay, and he says about her, she says that I'm a rose of Sharon, and he says, yep, you're a lily among thorns. So is my love among the daughters. So everybody else is thorns in comparison to her. And again, this is the type of love that we should have for our spouses, isn't it? That she is not just our number one, she is the one and only for us. All right, and so then she goes on and explains how beautiful he is to her. And one of the key verses that I liked about this one, in verse 4, it says, he brought me to the banquet house, and his banner over me was love. And a banner was a flag. It was like what the soldiers would use whenever they were going out to war. They would have a banner, a signet, something that signified that they were theirs, and his was to her is his love. Everybody that saw them knew that they were in love. His banner over me is love. Okay. And so, and she says, I'm head over heels in love with him. And this is what her whole desire is towards him. All right. So then again, they go and speak about each other, talk about how beautiful they are. And he says in verse 10 here, this is still chapter 2, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing of birds is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grape give a good smell. All right, so he's saying spring has come. They have been all winter. They've had this courtship, this beautiful courtship. They've gotten to know one another, and he says, hey, it's time for us to get married. Oh, my dove, that thou art in the cleft of the rock, in the secret places of the stair. Let me see thy countenance, let me hear thy voice, for sweet is thy voice, and thy countenance is comely. Okay? Now this one here, is actually verse 15, I would probably put that in pink. I think this is her. And she says, take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. I meant to put that in pink there, because I think what she's saying to him is, look, you need to take care of some situations here before you can do this. This foxes getting into the vines. He's talking about how beautiful and everything the garden is. And she's like, yeah, but there's some foxes here that need to be taken care of before we can get married. Before I say yes, you need to take care of these foxes in the vineyard. Now, this could be, again, looking at the context here, looks to me like she's speaking about her brothers, that he needed to go and speak to them and find out whether she could get married or not. They're still thinking of her as a little girl. She's now a grown woman, and Solomon needs to go and take care of this so that they can get married. And so she doesn't say yes at this point in time. Okay. And again, you can see that she's speaking about him and how beautiful that he is. Okay. Now, the problem is that now she's told him no. Okay. She loves him, but she wants him to take care of this situation. And so she did not say yes to him right away. Now he's gone. All right. And she says, by night on my bed, I sought him, whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not, because she had said no to him. And so he wasn't there. I will arise now and go about the city in the streets and in the broad ways. I will seek him whom my soul loveth. I sought him and found him not. So now she's wanting to go and tell him, hey, I want to get married here. I'm not saying, no, I wanted you to take care of that situation, but I want you to know this is a definite yes. All right. So she's sick, lovesick now. The watchmen that go about the city found me and said, saw ye him whom my soul loveth? So she's asking the watchmen, have you seen him? It was but a little that I passed from them, but I found him whom my soul loveth. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house, into the chamber of her that conceived me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the roes and by the hinds of the field, that you stir not up nor awake my love till you please. All right, so she says, I found him and told him we're getting married. He said that's, and so they get married, and then, and so now the daughters of Jerusalem are asking, who is this that cometh out of the wilderness like pillars of smoke? So this is the marriage ceremony. Okay, he's coming out. He's perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all powders of the merchant. Behold, his bed, which is Solomon's. 80 valiant men are about it, of the valiant of Israel. They all hold swords, being expert in war. Every man hath a sword upon his thigh, because of fear of in the night. King Solomon made himself a chariot of wood of Lebanon. He made of pillars thereof of silver, and the bottom thereof of gold, covering of purple, in the midst to bring paved with love for the daughters of Jerusalem. O go forth, ye daughters of Zion, and behold King Solomon with the crown wherewith his mother crowned him in the day of his espousals, and in the day of the gladness of his heart. Okay, and so we see here that they're speaking about this marriage and Solomon coming and how beautiful he looked and how good that he smelled. He's got all his finery. He's also put protection around her. 80 valiant men, 60 valiant men are about it. In other words, he's put his protection up for her. He has pulled out all the stops. He's got a beautiful marriage going on here. He's made a chariot of wood of Lebanon, and he's going after his bride. Okay, with all of the finery and everything. Everybody's watching and says, man, here goes our king. Okay, and so he marries her. He puts on this elaborate, and he also secures her too with his military. So this is the way that it should be. Because of the love that we have for our wives, we should protect them. We should make sure that we do our best, that we look our best, that we do all of those things because of how great that we love for them, or how great our love is for them. And chapter 4 expresses that great love that he had and how beautiful that she was to him. And this goes right down through from the top of her head down to the soles of her feet, how much that he loves her. Okay, he explains her lips, her tongue, the whole thing. All right, so y'all can read that at a future time. All right, and she gives herself to him. That's what we have in verse 16 here, in the marriage act. All right, and then verse 5, and he says, "I've come here and I've done these things," and then and it's almost like as if God is speaking here. Eat, O my friends, drink ye. Drink abundantly, O beloved. In other words, this is what it's all about. Okay, and then then a time breaks. There's a time lapse here between verse 1 and verse 2 here. And something happens. Something goes awry. And she says, I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocks. All right, and so she's in her bed sleeping at this point in time, and he comes in knocking, and so she's already in bed. Obviously, it's late, and he says to her, "Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled." Now, before he's got all of this romantic poetry. Now, some time has passed. All right, my friend, my love, my dove, my undefiled. For my head is filled with dew, my locks with the drops of the night. In other words, he's been out all night. He's got the dew on his head. This signifies being out super late, and he's coming home. And she says, I've put off my coat. How shall I put it on? In other words, I'm already in bed. I'm not getting out of this bed for you. You should have come home earlier. I have washed my feet. How shall I defile them? Now, I'm not getting out of this bed and get my feet all dirty and then have to get washed up again and come back to bed. You should have been home earlier. All right. So we've all had those times in our marriages, I'm sure, when one or the other is not pleased with what the other one's doing. So this is what's going on here. And she says, my beloved put in his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. Okay, so she says he tried to get in, he couldn't get in. And now after this time and he's gone, her bowels were moved for him, and she gets up to open up the door, and it says, my hands dropped with myrrh, and my fingers with sweet smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. In other words, he was there, but now he's gone. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. My soul failed when he spake. I sought him, but I could not find him. Now she wishes he was there, but he's not. All right. So she has a longing. They had this tiff, this argument, but now he's gone, and she's wishing that he was there. I sought him, but could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. The watchman that went about the city. Now, last time the watchman helped her find him, and whenever she was getting ready to get married, but now he's. It says that the watchmen went about the city, found me, smote me, they wounded me. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if ye find my beloved, that you tell him, I'm sick of love. And so she says, I'm lovesick. I need to find him. But whenever I go out there, they're not helping me. As a matter of fact, they're hurting me whenever I go out there. All right. And so she does not have the protection of her husband now. And so everybody's against her. Right. And that's the way it feels a lot of times whenever we have these arguments. Everybody's against you, and what you did was wrong, and you feel that guilt, that burden of guilt on you, and you wish that things could be rectified. Verse 9, these are the daughters of Jerusalem here. It says, what is thy beloved more than any other beloved? So why seek him more than anyone else? O thou fairest among women, what is thy beloved more than any other beloved, that thou dost so charge us? Now this is the point where we come to, and this is what we need to do whenever we have these problems with our husbands and our wives, is we need to go back to the point that drew us to them to begin with. And that's what these daughters are doing. They're saying, why do you love him more than any other? I've done this many times in talking to people about their marriages and everything, is that, and I've done this, I've had to do this in my own mind with myself and with Kate, is, why did we fall in love to begin with? What drew me to her to begin with? And I think falling in love is probably not the best phrase. That's what we always say. But what drew me to her to begin with? And you go back to that point, that place, and you say, well, this is the reason why that I love her so much. And it's good for us to remember those times, remember those things that we loved to begin with. And so she starts explaining to them, my beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. His head is as the most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. His eyes are as the eyes of doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. So she goes back down through here and she says, I love him from head to toe, and I want to find him. Okay, and so she explains to them what she loves so much about Solomon. Chapter 6, verse 1. Whether is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whether is thy beloved turned aside, what that we may seek him with thee? So they said, hey, where do you think he's gone? And she knew exactly where he had gone. My beloved has gone down into his garden, to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather the lilies. My beloved is I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. He feeds among the lilies. Okay, and so whatever that, I don't even know what that means, but whatever it means, she knew. What I do see from this is she really did know where he was. And so that's where she was going to find him. And that's where she went to. And this is the case with our marriages as well. Oftentimes we do know where our spouses are. We may have been in denial before, and that's where she was before, is she was in denial about where he had went. She didn't know where he'd went, all this kind of stuff. We know our spouses well enough that we know where they go, and we know where we can find them, and we need to go to that place, and we need to rectify the situation, get it right. And that's what I see from this all this poetic language around it, but this is really where it is. And these are some good practical tips for marriages, is that we do have some fallen outs, but don't wait for them to come to you. You go to them and make things right. You say, well, it was their fault. He shouldn't have been out so late. Well, maybe so. But I want to, let's go back to the Garden of Eden, shall we? Remember when Adam and Eve got into sin? Eve and Adam both ate the apple after God told them not to. And then they went and hid from God. Who went to find whom? That's right. God went to find them, didn't he? All right. And so we are supposed to be ambassadors of Christ. We're supposed to be showing Christ's love to others. How do we do that? By loving the unlovable. All right. Your spouse may be at fault. Go to them anyway. You may find a better thing than you think. You think it's going to be difficult, and you think it's going to be hard to get things right. But boy, whenever we have that lovesick feeling like she's had here, she goes to him. She goes and finds him. All right. And this is what she finds, is that he is ready to take her back, and she's ready to take him back. Okay. She's already expressed this to other people. Look, and that's what we need to do. We need to go back and say, boy, why is it that I love them to begin with? And you start seeing that, and then it causes you to want them again, and you go back. And so he talks about how beautiful she is. Okay, and that's what this whole blue section is all about. And then they ask her, who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners? So she's coming. She looks beautiful, but the fire is in her eyes. And they're like, who is this? All right. And so it says, I went down into the gardens of nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded, or ever I was aware. My soul made me like unto the chariots of Nadab. All right. And then, so she's going down there with fire in her eyes, blazing hot trail, to see what was going on there and see whether he was ready to come back. And this is what she finds in verse 13. He says, return, return, O Shulamite, return, return, that we may look upon thee. What will we see in the Shulamite? And he says, as it were a company of two armies. And then he goes back to talking about how beautiful that she is. All right, that he is just ravished by her beauty, even though that she's coming in maybe a little bit hot-headed, that he loves her from the top of her head down to the soles of her feet. Okay, and then she realizes what's going on here in verse 10 of chapter 7 says, I am my beloved, and his desire is toward me. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Okay, so she says, I'm ready to go anywhere that you want to go. I'm ready to do whatever that you want to do. Let's just get things back right. All right. And chapter 8 speaks about how that she's ready to get back home and them to get things right, and that she's sorry that she ever left, and that she is ready to make up, basically. Okay, and this says it in very poetic, romantic language. All right. So anyway, and then verse 5 says, who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? Okay, so as they come back, they're basically seeing this couple coming back, and they're obviously in love with one another. And he says, I raised thee up under the apple tree. There thy mother brought thee forth. There she brought thee forth that bare thee. Set me as a seal upon thy heart, as a seal upon thine arm. For love is strong as death. In other words, let's don't do this anymore. Marriage is until death. Let's just make this promise to one another that we're not going to get into this kind of arrangement where I have to go off and all this kind of stuff. Let's just, let's make amends. Jealousy is cruel as the grave, and coals thereof as coals of fire, which hath a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can a floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned. Look, love is worth it. Okay, love is worth fighting for. And so he says, let's make amends here. Let's set a seal. Let's make it. And so she says, this is where she talks about her brothers again and about how that they wanted to keep her, but now she belongs to Solomon. And as it turns out, verse 13 says, thou that dwellest in the gardens, the companions hearken to thy voice, cause me to hear it. In other words, I want to hear you all the time. Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like a roe to the young hart upon the mountains of spices. All right, so this kind of gives us all of the illusions of love and marriage and the things that go with it. There's sometimes that there's foxes that have to be dealt with. Sometimes there's things that come up, but we need to do our best to set a seal on our spouses and love them and not let jealousy come into our homes and make a mess of things. So very beautiful poetry. If you're into such romantic poetry, and you know what, it's good for us to turn to that even as men for a short period of time and look at these things again. Read this over with your spouse. Look at these things. Hopefully, it's helped you at least to divide up the men and the women's voices. That was my biggest part here in studying this, is trying to figure out who's saying what and all this kind of stuff. But hopefully that will help you as we've gone through here. Okay, so thank you for being here today and watching this video. Hopefully it's been a help to you. I'm not sure, not sure if it has or not, but hopefully it has. Hopefully it's helped at least in a little bit. All right. Now let's pray. Father, thank you so much for our marriages. Thank you for our spouses that put up with us and tolerate us. Help us to always remember the love that seals the bonds that we have with one another. I pray, Lord, that you would be with the marriages that may be in jeopardy right now. I know that there's a lot of people that are going through a lot of difficulties, and I pray, Father, for them right now, that you would help them and mend those marriages. Help them to remember what caused them to love each other to begin with, what drew them together to begin with. And may it always be about you and centered around you. And remember the vows that we've made to one another. We love you and thank you for all that you do. And it's in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.